back to another edition of MLB Division Previews. I am your host, Deep Pockets, aka Alexi. That's my name on here. And I've got Big Sean. Big Sean has been my co-host on these previews for the last two that we've done. We've already done the National League Central and the National League West, but today we cover the National League East. We're going to give it all to you again. Favorite players, favorite teams, who we don't like, what to look out for in 2025. Sean, welcome to the live. I'm looking forward to doing this show again with you. How are you doing today?
Dude, doing great. I think my World Series pick might come out of the NL West, but I think a lot of my playoff picks are going to be coming out of the NL East. I like a couple teams in the NL East this year. I've had a fun time doing these with you.
Yeah, man, me too. The more I do these, the more I get even more excited for the season. Like, we are both huge baseball guys, but when we're actually looking into teams, previewing them, knowing what they're going to look like, it's nothing like it. And when you get to the actual start of baseball and you get it for 6+ months, nothing better than that. Nothing better than waking up and checking your phone to see the fantasy team, to see what the bets are for the day, to see what your favorite team is doing wrong, and to just rip them on Twitter. Yeah, can't wait for it. It's going to be exciting.
All right, let's hop into it.
We are 18 days away from opening day, and we will probably not have a lot of good things to say here. We're going to start with the Miami Marlins. The Miami Marlins, probably one of the biggest dumpster fire organizations in baseball, and in my opinion, all of sports. Sean, we can go through it all day long. The players that they develop, you have to give them credit for it because they have had a lot of talent here in Miami. Mm-hmm. It's what they do with those players. They never keep them around. They trade them. This is an organization that, in my opinion, doesn't care about winning. And I continue to just be in awe of how horrible it's run. And when there's a guy by the name of Marlin Man who gets the most attention out of your organization, I think there's a lot of issues. So the Miami Marlins, absolute disaster, pathetic organization. But in 2025, is there any hope for this team? Their over-under sits at 63.5. Sean, what are you thinking about the Miami Marlins this year?
Alexi, there's no hope for this team. There is no hope for this team. This might be the worst team in the league. I think the Rockies and the Marlins are going to be competing neck and neck all season long for the worst record in the league. They won 100. They lost 100 games last year, fired their manager, and I think they got even worse.
It's insane that Skip Schumacher is already fired from them. He just gets no blame at all. Skip Schumacher was good for that first year. I believe they made the playoffs in his first season, and they did nothing but tear the team apart. They have, in my opinion, the only good player on their team is Sandy Alcantara, the guy who, of course, the Cardinals traded for Marcell Ozuna. Man, I'm looking top to bottom of this team here. I need to pull up their Zips projections, but is it really Jesus Sanchez, one of their best hitters in the lineup? Is that really what we're going to say here? Sean, is there anybody else in this offense that you can even trust to do well over the course of 162?
There is not. There's not one player. Even their first baseman, a guy named Matt Mervis this year, first base is supposed to be where maybe your best hitter is. They're worthless. Their whole infield is worthless. I think Jesus Sanchez is going to get traded by season's end, and it looks like Sandy Alcantara is going to get traded by season's end. And there's really no hope for this team. They're very weak in the prospect department. The latest MLB rankings have them 16th in farm system. There's no hope for this team. I'm 63 is even too much for me. I'm taking the under.
Yeah, this is a team who, looking at it on paper here, now this is Fangraphs. We are looking back at this from a couple months ago, but we like to look at their projections and their WAR, etc. Look at that rotation there, and you see Jesus Luzardo. Shocker, they traded him. Just another guy in the system that's been traded, and they traded him to a division team, the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm looking at this roster right now, Sean. There's seriously not one good thing I can say about it. Looking at the outfield right now, Sanchez, Stowers, Lopez, Edwards, Bride. This is a very, very bad team. The only thing I can maybe say positive about them is if Alcantara or Alcantara is good. Then you've got Weathers, who has tried to put it together, but I don't think he's really reliable to do so. Edward Cabrera as well. There's just way too many bad things about this team. And if you look a little bit deeper into it, looking at their bullpen, another thing that they lost last year was Tanner Scott. Tanner Scott was a main part of that bullpen at the end of it, and they lost him. They traded him last year, and of course, he's now on the Dodgers. So just a lot of ugly things about this team. I think they're not going in any kind of direction. And to go into a little bit of how they are as an organization, they never can fill up the stadium. And part of that probably is because of ownership, and they have absolutely nothing there for them. But there's just there's nothing exciting about this Marlins team. So yeah, this is a lost cause. I'm actually shocked that they're at 63.5 wins in a very competitive and strong National League East. I think they're going to struggle big time here. And yes, Sean, like you said, if they trade any of these somewhat good to decent players on this organization, I think this is a lost year for the Marlins. I'm absolutely out on them. I don't think there's anything else I can say in a positive way.
It's going to take some luck even to get to 60 wins, as far as I'm concerned.
And I'm also looking here. They had Jake Berger here. Didn't he get traded? Am I crazy? Didn't he get traded to Texas?
Yeah, Jake Berger on the Rangers. Yep.
So he's on the Rangers. That's another, somewhat capable offensive player in baseball who is not going to be on the Marlins anymore. So yeah, over the years, man, they've had Ozuna, Stanton, Hanley Ramirez. I mean, Sean, I think you had a list of all the players. Is there one guy on that team from the past who you're like, why did they not keep him? Why was this ever a time that you would think you should trade a guy like that? And one other question, do you believe that they're just they're a small market team that doesn't have a lot of revenue that can't compete?
Well, here's the thing. There is a alternate reality out there that they could have had this lineup at one point if they had, the money to spend, they had the culture to keep these players. They could have had Miguel Cabrera, Giancarlo Stanton, Hanley Ramirez, Christian Yelich, Marcell Ozuna, JT Realmuto, Josh Beckett. I mean, all these guys, mid-2000s, that entire roster, that entire organization, if they had a real ownership group, if they actually spent on free agents, it would have been totally different. We think of them now as a joke, but they've developed some of the best players, Hall of Fame players, just over the last 20 years, which is crazy to think about. I mean, they got rid of Ozuna, Yelich, and Stanton all within the same couple of years. Those were three outfielders that every team in the league wanted at the time.
And that's the crazy thing to me. It's like, we're giving you credit for the development. You're developing these players, but you can't even hang on to them. It's just insane. And I think they don't care. They don't have a care in the world for it. So, like I said, when your most notable guy in your organization is a fan who sits behind home plate and they call him Marlin Man, and he doesn't even go to your own games, there's a problem with your organization. I've actually been to, I think this is one of two. No, yeah, I've been to the Marlins and I've been to New York City Field. So of all these stadiums, I've been to two. And I will say this about Miami Stadium. Absolutely terrible. There's nothing to it. It felt like an amusement park atmosphere. There was kids everywhere. All they cared about was getting cotton candy. No one cared about baseball there. And there was more fans from the opposing team. Yes, there was more Cardinals fans at this game than Marlins fans. Even the stadium sucks. The stadium's a joke. I think the only positive I would say is they gave you free refills on souvenir sodas. So, hey, if you want a free soda, go buy a $7 soda or whatever, however much it is, and fill up on refills all game.
Yeah, let's not waste any more time on the Miami Marlins. This is going to be another sad, pathetic year for the Miami Marlins this year. I saw, just to cap it off, it looks like they've only won 2 playoff games, which was in that joke of a 2020 postseason series. They played 2 wild card games. They won them. They were 2 games over 500 that year. They've only won those 2 playoff games in the last 21 seasons since their championship in 2003, which, I mean, this is right there with the Rockies' maybe the worst organization in all of baseball, maybe a bottom 5, bottom 10 organization in all of the major pro sports.
100%. They're a joke, and that's enough conversation on the Miami Marlins. We've given them enough and more than they actually even need. So under, I'll be on the under. I'm not going to overthink this one at all. I think the Marlins finish under 63.5 wins. They're just a pathetic team with nothing going in the right direction. But we'll move to a team who is going in the right direction and looks to be loaded again in 2025, and that is the Atlanta Braves. Sean, I usually like to target teams like this who are coming off a disappointing season. So they still made the playoffs last year, but they were just hampered by injuries. They had so many guys go down. Acuna, Austin Riley got hit in the wrist like the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. The pitching stayed healthy for the most part, outside of Spencer Strider, of course. A full season of Strider would have been nice for that Atlanta team. They had the Cy Young winner in Chris Sale. But man, this is such a good Atlanta team. And like I said at the beginning, I like to target teams like this who are so good. They're projected to do well. And this is my team in the National League East. I think they are going to win it. Their odds, as you see at the bottom, are plus 140. Those are the best odds across all sports books. I think they win this division. I know it's going to start a little slow without Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider. Those are the two key guys who they expect to get back somewhere in May, maybe June. But it's not always how you start. It's how you finish. And as long as you can get those guys healthy, I think this is still a really damn good Atlanta team. They added They added Jerickson Profar, and you still bring back Matt Olson. You got Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies. Sean, am I missing anything here? How do you feel about the Braves here in 2025?
No, I like the Braves too. I love the rebound we're going to see from that offense. I think that offense is going to explode. By the middle of May, you might have your full allotment of all those guys. Acuna, with Matt Olson, with Riley, with Albies, with Michael Harris. Everything in the lineup looks good, and I even think that this Sean Murphy injury, which he might be out for a month, they said maybe 2 months, that the Drake Baldwin, the catcher who's going to replace him, I think he's going to be just fine. I think that offense is going to be fine with Acuna, without Acuna. By the middle of the year, I think that offense is going to be the best in the league. Now, the pitching, I think Max Fried was a pretty big loss for their staff, especially with Chris Sale having such a high workload last year. That's the one thing I'm worried about. Do you think Chris Sale can pretty much survive the whole season? Do you think Chris Sale can get almost to 200 innings? I don't know. I'm worried about some of the depth in that rotation. I think Schwellenbach looked very good at the end of last year. I think he needs to come out, hold that rotation spot, that number 2-3 spot in the rotation before they get Strider back. We'll see about Reynaldo Lopez, one of those guys that converted from a relief pitcher to a starting pitcher last year. Had a great year. Kind of fell off at the end, but he had a complete solid year. We'll see if he can stay healthy this year. But as of right now, it looks like Grant Holmes and Ian Anderson are in that rotation. So we'll see. They have a couple young guys coming up through the system. We'll see if that rotation can get some help, maybe via a trade later in the year. But the premium talent on this team, unquestioned. I think all those guys are going to bounce back. I think Riley's going to have a better year. Olson's going to have a better year. I think Acuna is going to come back strong. I think Albies is going to be fine. Michael Harris was one of the guys I loved last year. He had a down first half last year, got an injury, but then kind of in the second half, he was leading off for them. He actually kind of exploded there at the end of the year. I think he's going to be a great 6-7 hitter for this lineup. I think the lineup will take this team far. I think I'm right there with you. I'm probably taking the over on these wins. I love them in this division this year.
100%, Sean. I'm with you on the Braves. Good point about Chris Sale. Let me give you a little background to Chris Sale and his numbers over the last few years, especially in the innings pitched department. So last season, he went 18-3, 2.38 ERA. He went 177 2/3 innings pitched. Phenomenal season. He stayed healthy. You can't really ask for more. Cy Young winner, of course. But look at his few seasons prior to that. So that was the most innings he had pitched in a season since 2019. In 2019, he pitched in 147 1/3 innings. In 2021, in 2020 he didn't even pitch. It was a COVID season, so whatever. But in 21, he pitched 42 2/3. In 2022, he pitched just 5 2/3. And in 23, he pitched in just 102 and 2/3 innings. So, yes, how does Chris Sale do this year, coming off some of the most innings pitched in his career since those last 5 years that I just talked about? So, a little bit of a concern there. I would hope that Chris Sale can stay healthy, but we just know the injury risk that he has, the way he pitches and stuff.
Yeah, I think the depth in that rotation is going to be pretty much their whole season. I think they need to come out. They can't falter without Acuna and Strider there in their lineup and in their rotation. But if they can stay, above water, if they can stay afloat, I think those are going to be. I mean, can you imagine adding Ronald Acuna and Spencer Strider to your team in the middle of May when you already have a pretty set up team, solid roster? That's incredible. That's an MVP and a Cy Young guy coming right back to a team that is already, pretty stacked at the top.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. So if you can be just afloat, like doing well, you start the season, doesn't have to be on some incredible April and May, but just be good, be decent, have your team set, and then boom, you bring back Acuna and Strider. That's all you need for the rest of the season. You're loaded. So, yes, very high in this Braves team. Just looking at some of the projections here, as you see in WAR, Michael Harris 5.6 projected WAR. That's crazy. They are very high on him. Ronald Acuna, of course, he's going to have those numbers there. But I am excited to see how Profar does in this offense. I mean, you're losing. What's the guy's name that I'm thinking of? You're losing Max Fried on the pitching staff, but in a way, you're going to replace him with Strider. And then on offense, you're bringing in Profar. I think that's going to be fine. You're going to be all around a good team with the Braves. This is an offense who has been carried by all these guys. Ozuna, not even a lot of people expected Ozuna after he had that somewhat down season. They didn't expect Ozuna to do what he's doing. And if he can just be out there and DHing the way he's been, that's another X factor for me is Marcell Ozuna. Keep him in the lineup as long as he's hitting his home runs and driving people in. This Braves offense, top to bottom, is super strong, and I don't really see a lot of holes in it. You look at their bullpen, it looks like they still have Iglesias. He had a pretty good season last year. I think he had a couple of mishaps at times, but I think that's a pretty strong bullpen for the most part. I believe they lost AJ Minter, so that'll be somewhat of a loss for them. I think they'll be okay, though. The bullpen will be just fine, and if they need to make moves at the deadline, I think they're going to be capable of doing so.
Totally agree. I think even you look at their holes, you try to pinpoint their holes on the position player side. Orlando Arcia, perfect ninth hitter in their lineup. I mean, he's going to be fine. He's going to hit 240. He's going to play good defense at short. That's the exact type of player you need in this roster on this team. I don't see Albies having a bad year. Riley's one of the most proven veterans in the league. Matt Olson, I love Matt Olson this year. I think last year he's a little annoyed. I think he's coming into the season a little pissed off, and I love a big year from Matt Olson this year. I'm even going to sprinkle maybe some Matt Olson MVP odds this year. That's how much I really like the power coming out of Matt Olson this season. And you look at a guy like Michael Harris, kind of a forgotten guy on this team, such a power-packed team. Going to be a great defensive center fielder. That guy could run into a 30-30 season, and I wouldn't even be surprised. That's the type of team we're talking about. They're all locked up for years and years to come. If this pitching holds up at all, if these guys can stay healthy, I mean, Strider, Sale in a postseason matchup, that's incredible right there too. So the holes are not big enough for me to be scared at that 92.5. I like that number. I think I'm taking the over on the Braves this year.
And that was one thing I was going to add, Sean, before I talk about that quick 1 and 2 in your rotation, to back up Sean on why he believes, why I also believe Olson could have a bounce back season. Just look at his 21 season. In 2021, he hit 39 home runs. In 2022, he hit 34. And in 2023, he hit 54. He had a huge season in 2023. He played in all 162 games. Hold on. Let's just do a little quick slow clap. Matt Olson has played 3 straight seasons without an off day. He played in 162 games in 2022. And in 2023, he played in 162. And in 2024, he played in 162. How many guys in this day of baseball go out there and play every single game? That is just absolutely needs to be talked about. I love players like this. They don't take off days. man, I would love to have a guy like Matt Olson. The guy who just goes out there every damn day and wants to play. Love that. Freaking love that. I remember hearing about it last year, but I totally forgot about it, of how Matt Olson just plays every game. It's incredible.
I think Riley's going on 2 years in a row too. Played every game of the year.
That's awesome.
Which is crazy.
But yes, love Matt Olson, especially if you're going to get him playing every day, and especially in fantasy. How can you hate having a guy like him in your lineup from a fantasy standpoint, and from an actual, you're putting money on this team to do well in the long term. You want Matt Olson in that lineup every single day. So yes, love that about Matt Olson. He's an incredible player, and he's got the power to hit another 40 to, who knows, maybe 50 home runs again if he has the right season. But yes, one quick thing about the Braves, and then let's move on to the next one. If there's a team who I truly believe can match up with this Dodgers team if it comes to a postseason series, it's the Braves. From the offensive standpoint, you see how loaded that Braves offense is. And then if you can get that pitching to be healthy in the playoffs, and you start with Chris Sale, Spencer Strider, maybe you pick up a guy on the trade block, or if Reynaldo Lopez is having the type of year he did last year, then that's the team who I believe can truly match up with this Los Angeles Dodgers team, especially from the National League.
Yep, especially on offense as well. Great lineup this year. I've got them down probably to score the most runs in the entire league this year. Great offense.
Wow, awesome. I love that. You know what I need to do? I'm pulling this up really quick on the video as we're talking about the Atlanta Braves. I didn't post this on my preview here, but I want to see what their odds are to win the World Series, because like I said, man, if they can match up with the Dodgers and they can take them in a 7-game series, they can absolutely win the World Series. So let me see their World Series futures before we move on to the next team here. I'm pulling it up, and it looks like their odds are, it's going to be difficult here. Let me go to World Series winner. Here we go.
Yeah, it's crazy. You look at their injury luck last year, I think they got bit by the injury bug maybe more than any team in the entire league last year. And there's just
no way to pull up the World Series futures. I didn't have it posted here on the page, but I did find it here. And they are, according to all sports books, plus 950 to win the World Series. So we've got the Dodgers at plus 290, the Yankees at 900, and the Atlanta Braves plus 950. I love that. I might have to put a little bit of a futures bet on it, because I can't continue to rave enough about this team. They're really, really good. I think there's a lot of potential for this Braves team to have a huge bounce back in 2025. So that might be another bet I put in, is the World Series futures for the Braves.
I think the crazy thing last year was they were so killed by injuries, which that just doesn't happen, multiple years in a row. It seems like injury luck seems to fluctuate a little bit. I think this team is going to be a little healthier this year. I think they're going to be more cautious with all their guys, to a point where I think they're going to be at their peak, at their hottest at the end of the year, after maybe a trade or two as well. I mean, I'm going to like this team a lot going into the postseason.
Yep. Totally with you. Good organization. It's well run. Good general manager. A good manager for in-game as well. Good team all around. There's not a lot of bad or negative things to say about this Atlanta Braves team. So best of luck to them this year. I will definitely hope for it, because I will have some futures bets on them throughout the season, and probably a lot during the season too, when I'm betting on them against other teams, especially if I'm going to be betting some overs with that offense and how good they can be. All right, well, let's move on to the next team. That is the Washington Nationals, a team who is somewhat up and coming. I think they're still a couple years away from being truly competitive, but I think they can be competitive enough in 2025. They have a lot of young guys who are looking to break out, or at least just sustain themselves in Major League Baseball. Over-under sits at 71.5. Sean, I can let you start with this one, but the Nationals coming into 2025, I think we all know about the young core they have and excitement around this organization for what they're trying to build back up after losing Juan Soto a couple years ago. So how do you feel about the Nationals this year? Is this a team who you think can be competitive in the division? I know they're going up against a lot of teams, such as the Mets, the Phillies, and the Braves, but is this a team who can be competitive overall in 2025?
So I don't think they can compete for the division in 2025 unless something insane happens. But the direction of this team, unlike some of the other clunkers in the National League, is there. 100%. I love the direction of this team. I love that they were in the playoff mix for a good part of the season last year. I think that's so important to all those young guys, the CJ Abrams, Mitchell Parker, Dylan Cruz is going to start maybe every day this year, and then James Wood, another part of their huge young core, which could turn into a really strong young core, especially in the outfield with Cruz and Wood. The pitching this year, very interesting as well. A lot of high ceiling guys, some risky guys. I know DJ Hers last year had some great games last year. I think that DJ Hers maybe beat me 3 times in fantasy on a Sunday fantasy afternoon. That guy killed me last year. I think he had 2 games where he struck out like 11 or 12 or something. I'd have to go back and look it up. But DJ Hers and Mitchell Parker already with Mackenzie Gore, that can be pretty sneaky rotation this year as well. I think we're looking at a Nats team where in 2026, 2027 could be the years when we start seeing these guys play really well. I think these next couple off seasons will be very telling in terms of the direction of the team. Will they make any trades? I think the next couple off seasons will be big, signing free agents for them. I love the direction of this team. I think CJ Abrams could really break out this year, like really break out this year. I love him at short. And then don't forget, Alexi, the Nationals have that number 1 pick in the draft this year, which I think will be another interesting step in this organization. I like the direction of the team. This is not the year for the Nats. That 71.5 number, I don't know. They're not going to compete for this division this year, but there are some players on this team I'd love to trade some of my veterans on the Cardinals for. I'll tell you that.
Well, Sean, I can't lie. When you said Alexi, don't forget, I thought you were going to say, don't forget that the Nationals signed former Cardinal Paul DeJong. Because Paul DeJong, there he is, projected in that lineup that I just pulled up here. Number 8th hitter, projected to hit 8th and play third base. Who knows if that's true, but they signed him, and that's what the latest projections have here on RotoChamp. I think that was pretty funny to see Paul DeJong is getting a contract with the Nationals. Hey, hopefully he can stay in the league. I mean, he's a good guy. I hope he does well for the Nationals and can help that younger core as he's more of a veteran now in the league. But I did think that was funny and wanted to point out Paul DeJong is now in the Nationals. But I do like the addition of Nate Lowe. I mean,
what do you think about Nate Lowe?
The trade from the Rangers, a pretty damn good guy, good player as well. Good on base percentage. I don't think he strikes out too many times. I think he's kind of an average strikeout hitter. But yeah, man, I think Nate Lowe's a good piece to this team. And yeah, we talked about Dylan Cruz. Sean, you said Dylan Cruz at the beginning. He is on a lot of sports books the favorite to win Rookie of the Year. So a lot of high expectations for Dylan Cruz. If you don't know about him, he is a stud up-and-coming player who is looking to get the full workload this season for the Nationals. And then, yes, James Wood. So a very nice young core here. CJ Abrams, atop the order. Dylan Cruz, James Wood. You add in Nate Lowe. Josh Bell, I mean, with him, you're kind of hit or miss. He's just kind of that average to could be good major league player. But Luis Garcia, too. Sean, I think I saw something that you had some high praise or some good things to say about Luis Garcia. Is that a guy who people should be looking out for in 2025?
I think he could be kind of their entire you look for guys that you kind of don't realize that the Ben Zobrist types that weren't high prospects, they just exploded. They can do a lot of things. They're 5-tool guys. Luis Garcia, I think, is right there. He was 2 home runs away last season from being a 2020 player. He has great defense at second base, one of the best defensive second basemen in the league, projected to be an above average bat this year. He could be right along with Wood and Cruz and Abrams as a part of that young core that's going to be very sneaky for the next couple of years. He's only 24, 25 years old. I think he has a bright future with the Nationals also.
100%, man. I also was looking at their pitching. So just to give a little bit more of a conversation to their pitching, that's probably my biggest negative to them is the poor pitching. I like Mackenzie Gore. I just feel like he's another guy who hasn't really put it all together. Like he'll have his really good games, high strikeout guy, but he gives up a lot of hard contact too, which worries me.
Yeah, him and Mitch Keller to me are so similar profile. It's crazy.
I know him and Mitch Keller. If they could just figure it out, those could be really good starting pitchers in baseball. But that's a guy who I have to see more from him before I truly trust a staff that's led by Mackenzie Gore. And if you look at the bottom, the bottom of that rotation really gives me the concerns. The fact that Trevor Williams is still a starter in this league is concerning to me. I mean, again, he's a guy who in fantasy, if you're scraping by trying to get a spot start from somebody, you just have to pray that he can get you like 4 points if you're in a fantasy points league, of course. Because my gosh, I think I've picked him up like 3 times in my entire life. And it's been the biggest disgusting thing I've ever had to do in fantasy baseball. But I think I was like a couple points away from winning. And I tried to like get to that point where I'm like, okay, Trevor Williams, give me like 5 or 6 points. Just give me something positive. And I swear on my life, I think he got me like negative points in every game that he's pitched for me. It's something stupid and crazy about it. Like I look at the box score, like I think I added him. I was like, screw it, let's see what happens. And then 30 minutes later, after the game starts, it says Trevor Williams, inning and 2/3 innings pitched, 7 earned runs, 2 strikeouts, and 6 walks. I'm like, literally the worst possible thing that could have happened with Trevor Williams. So, yes, I am not a big Trevor Williams fan, but the Nationals seem to want to keep that guy around because he was there last year too. So I'm not sure why, but I feel like there's other capable pitchers out there they could have got for about the same price as him, if not better. So,
no, for sure. And it looks like even Michael Soroka might get a couple starts for this team, which that's pretty gross as well. I think the bottom of that rotation is really going to hurt that team. I don't think they're going to compete this year for the East, but I like Mitchell Parker. And what do you think about Jake Irvin? He kind of had a more of a breakout year last year. Do you think that type of pitcher is on his way to being a middle of rotation guy, or do you think this year he might take a step back? It looks like he's only 28 years old, still kind of in the middle of his prime.
Yeah, man, he can be serviceable, man, in this league. Looking at his numbers, and take it all with a grain of salt. It's spring training. You can't really say there's a lot here, but he has a 0.84 ERA in 4 games so far, and it's only 10 and 2/3 innings pitched. Like I said, take it with a grain of salt. It doesn't really mean a lot. But yes, I think Jake Irvin can be that, potential really good 3, really good 4 on a team like the Nationals, because last year we saw him have a lot of really, really solid games. I'm not seeing a lot here from his stats, but I think the walks are down. That's nice. You don't see a lot of walks from this kind of guy. And just looking at some of the strikeouts, the numbers there. Yeah. I think Irvin can take that next step, and I believe that he can be really good in this rotation. I don't know if he's going to be like taking a step even higher and higher, like to where he could be a potential trade target for some of these teams. Yeah. Maybe at some point, like in a couple years, but I think Irvin's a good piece for this Nationals team right now.
Yeah, I mean, you give me something a little better up the middle. You give me a catcher. You give me top of the rotation guy going into next year, and some of these guys really blossom in 2025. We're talking about the Nationals competing for the division next year for sure.
Absolutely. And another thing I wanted to add here before we move on to our 4th team in the National League East here on the Deep Pockets MLB preview, the Nationals over under 71.5 is tough. I don't know which way I would go with it. If I had to make a decision on the spot right now, I think I would say they're about a 70 win team, 69 to 70 wins. So I'd slightly lean toward the under. But if that pitching can be serviceable, I think the offense can do enough to get them over 71.5, maybe at 72, 73, right around that number. And another way you can target this Nationals team, if it's the way that we both are projecting them to be, this could be a really fun, somewhat high-scoring offense at times and a bad pitching staff. I think you could take some overs with this team. If they're playing a team in the National League East, you're going to get probably somewhat good pitchers, and when you're playing the Braves and the Phillies. But if you're playing some of these other teams outside of the East with some weaker rotations, I think there could be a lot of targets for overs in those games. So look around and shop when the Nationals are playing some of these games. If you see some overs sitting around 8.5, I think those could be some good numbers to get the Nationals out this year, especially with the pitching and how they're capable on offense to do well, and a weaker bullpen. I don't really have a high expectation for this bullpen this year. All right. Awesome. Well, good stuff on the Washington Nationals. Best of luck to them. I've never been to this stadium. I'm going to try to get like a quick review on each stadium. We didn't really talk about well, I kind of ripped the Marlins one. We didn't talk about the Atlanta stadium. I've never been to Atlanta. Sean, really quick, let's just do a super fast, like, would you want to visit these stadiums? Like, is there anything appealing to you? The Braves one, I haven't seen too much of it. I would think I would like to see it in person at some point. It seems like a somewhat generic ballpark. I don't think there's a lot there, in my opinion, but I'd like to get to it. Is there anything about either of these stadiums that you'd like to go to, or is there anything that you see on TV that like something's cool about it?
Yeah, I would love to visit the Braves Stadium. I think that's 100%. I think out of all the stadiums here, I would want to go to the Braves. What is the Truist Park or down in Georgia? I think I love how much turnout for baseball is in the South too. I want to go see a Savannah Bananas game too, but that's another point. But I would love to go to Atlanta Stadium. I think we got some trips on the docket this year. And NL East is a good place because I don't know if I'll make it to Philly, but I know we've got family in New York, and I'd love to go to Atlanta. Marlins Stadium, I probably will never go to in my life, and I'm going to sleep like a baby every night knowing that fact. They might even relocate by the time I end up going to the Marlins Stadium. National Stadium, I don't know. I would love to go to DC and go to a baseball game, but I think the Braves would be the funnest stadium to go to.
Yeah, I've actually been outside of Nationals Park, I believe they call it. Yeah, Nationals Park is the stadium name in Washington, D.C. I went up there, I think in 2019 for like an East Coast trip, and I wasn't able to get to the game, but I was able to walk around the stadium. It's an interesting area. It seems like it's kind of just like on the outside of the downtown. Like it's like somewhat in the city downtown area, but there's not like a ton around the stadium. There's like a couple bars and restaurants, but it didn't feel like Wrigleyville or around Busch Stadium where there's a lot more to it. Maybe because it was just a weird day in the regular season. Maybe it was just kind of a quiet day there. But yeah, I didn't have too much of a strong feel for the atmosphere. I would like to see, though, that stadium just to go inside and kind of experience it because I want to try to hit every ballpark in baseball at some point.
And it's funny, the Nationals, another team where have an infinite money glitch. You're looking at Bryce Harper and Juan Soto being on the same team for decades. Trey Turner, all these guys, Max Scherzer, just a lot of good players coming through the Nationals as well.
Anthony Rendon when he was actually good and played.
Anthony Rendon. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Crazy. It is crazy to see. But yeah, good stuff on the Washington Nationals. Best of luck to them this year. And now we move to the Philadelphia Phillies. Phillies kind of coming off a disappointing season. They lost to the New York Mets last year in the division round, and they're looking to get back to their winning ways with stud Bryce Harper leading the way. Something about this Phillies team that they need to get a lot more credit for is that rotation just seems to always stay healthy, especially Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. When you get guys like those two who can pitch all season long, They're going to get you the innings, they're going to get you the strikeouts. That is something that you're always your team's pretty much going to always be in it and have a chance to go deep into the postseason, depending on how your team's hitting and how your team's pitching at that point, of course. But over the course of 162, I think the Phillies might be one of the more trustworthy teams if you like futures bets or like season total wins or just a team on a day-by-day basis because you know what you're getting on offense. You've got Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, all the guys. But you've got that pitching staff who can really stay healthy, as I said, and get you to 200 innings pitched. They also added Jesus Luzardo. Yeah, I'm still pretty high on this Phillies team. I do think they're going to be right around that number. I could see them finishing at about 89 or 88. I'll give my official projection as we get more into the show. But Sean, in 2025, how are you feeling about this Philadelphia Phillies team?
I like the Phillies. I think that number 90.5 is about perfect. I love the Luzardo trade. That's the perfect number 5 guy in the rotation. I love Wheeler and Nola, two of the most durable pitchers in all of the entire game. You're 100% right. Even a guy like Ranger Suarez, super durable guy, perfect number 3-4 in that rotation. And then the breakout of Christopher Sanchez last year, signed him to a big contract. That entire rotation is set. They're durable. I think they're going to have a strong year again this year. That alone is going to win your team a bunch of games, but they also have the offense to back it up, which I really like about the Phillies. They have Harper, which we can talk more about his long-term, what we like about Bryce Harper. I think Trey Turner has a little bit of a bounce back year. I still like Kyle Schwarber. Alec Boehm kind of turning into a everyday veteran at third, who again had another good year last year, looking to have another good year this year. I like the addition of Max Kepler. Stick him in the corner outfield. I think him over the full year is going to be solid 7-8 guy in that lineup. My only concerns with the Phillies, they're very lefty heavy, very, very, very lefty heavy. Harper and Schwarber and Kepler, and then Bryson Stott and Brandon Marsh, all lefties. The other thing too is these role guys on the Phillies, the Brandon Marsh, the Bryson Stott, Kepler, and then Nick Castellanos. Are we going to see? They really didn't change anything about their team this offseason, and it's been kind of the same type of role guys on that team year after year. Are we worried that somebody's going to have going to fall off a bit, or do you trust the bottom of that lineup this year to get them back to where they were the last couple of years, where they're solid offense, solid, consistent scoring offense, or are you worried about any of these guys? And I'll tell you, the one guy I'm worried about is Nick Castellanos. I do not know what he's going to look like this year, offensively or defensively.
We didn't even talk about this before we jumped on YouTube to break down these MLB teams, but here we are agreeing. Nick Castellanos, 100% with you, Sean. That is the player I'm most concerned about in this Phillies lineup. Looking at last season, he started really slow, I believe. I think he started to a point where it was like, geez, what are they going to do with Nick Castellanos? They're going to try to like trade him for like nothing and just get something out of him, or like what's going to happen? He did seem to heat up a little bit toward the end, and I think in the postseason he did good too. But yes, I am concerned about Nick Castellanos and especially his defense. He's horrible defensively in right field. Last season, let's look at his numbers. He hit 254. He struck out 139 times, walked just 41, hit 23 home runs, had 86 RBIs, hit for 254 average and a 311 on base percentage and a 742 OPS. Yeah, I'm just a little concerned. I think the drop off is kind of coming for Nick Castellanos. He's sitting there about 33 years old. He's getting up there, usually around this age, maybe a little bit later. You see these players start to fall off, and I think we're going to start seeing that even more with Nick Castellanos in 2025. I will say he played in 162 games last year, so he played the full season, which is surprising to me. He didn't have any off days. But yeah, that's the biggest player I'm probably most concerned about in this lineup. Nick Castellanos, not feeling pretty good about him.
The big thing is the defense. I like Trey Turner at short, but you look at the outfield, you're going to have to stick Castellanos or Schwarber in the corner. Brandon Marsh is going to probably be your everyday center fielder who they've platooned the last couple of years. That makes me a bit nervous. Kepler and Ryder left, good defensive corner outfielder, but I'm the defense is what kills you. They're relying heavy on those strikeout pitchers to get them through, those low scoring games. But we'll see that outfield defense. That is kind of like the silent killer when it comes to these season long, really good teams with solid offenses. Sometimes that defense, especially that outfield defense, is the silent killer all year long, which worries me. But again, with the rotation, I think the big thing too is they've got such good depth. They've got Jesus Luzardo as their number 5, and then they've got Andrew Painter, who's like number 8 prospect going into the year, and that just adds huge depth to that rotation. I think that rotation is going to be solid enough, maybe to overcome a lot of those defensive issues, but we will see. We will see. The other question I had for you, Alexi, was what's the long-term plan for Bryce Harper? Do you see him? He was a Gold Glove finalist at first last year, which, I mean, credit to him. That's kind of one of those things, as Moneyball would say, first base is incredibly hard. So let's not pretend like it's nothing out there. But are they going to stick him at first the rest of his career? He's probably got another 5-10 years left, especially in that bat. What do you think about his long-term end of his career here with Philly?
I think so. I think he'll definitely stick at first as long as he can. And that's a position I feel like if there's anything out there in baseball for, guys who get older in age and, we start to see them toward the end of their careers, I think those are positions they can play. Like first base, yeah, you have to be mobile enough. You got to make the plays. But I think he's done perfect since he made that transition from the outfield to first. So, yes, I think if he would have started a little bit slower and if there was more concerns like and question marks going into every year, I think you might see it maybe happen a little bit quicker where he just turns to that true DH for the Phillies. But I do believe that coming off pretty strong first base seasons, I think if he continues to get his reps there every season, he'll be the first baseman for as long as he really can be. And then if injuries start to pile up, maybe he just moves to that DH role. But yeah, I think long term, we see Bryce Harper as the everyday first baseman in Philadelphia.
And the other thing too, big question: how does the end of JT Realmuto's career look? I know he's been one of the most solid, consistent, durable catchers in the game. He's probably right there with some of the most durable long-term catchers in the game right now. He kind of comes from that class of catchers that came out before every single team was platooning catchers every single day. He's the guy that starts 5, 6, 7 games a week, which you do not see in the league anymore. But the bat has slowed down a bit. You're not going to see JT. The days of him ever getting close to 30 home runs are over. He's going to get on base. He takes good at bats. But are you worried about JT Realmuto? Maybe not this year, but maybe going into next year or even this year. What do you think about Realmuto at catcher?
Yeah, JT Realmuto is on the list for some concerns. 33. Him and Castellanos, same age, 33. They're getting up there. Going to turn 34 in June, it looks like. No, sorry, in March. He just turned 34 in March. March 18th, he will turn. Shout out. He's from Del City, Oklahoma. It looks like he was born in Oklahoma. It's pretty crazy to see from the Oklahoma area. Yeah, man, I am a little worried about Realmuto though, especially when he's projected to be their catcher for most of the games he plays. Like, there's really not a fit for him to be DH because of Kyle Schwarber, unless Kyle Schwarber is going to get most of the reps in the outfield. If Kyle Schwarber's your everyday DH for the most part, I don't think there's a lot of room for JT Realmuto to take more off days at catcher and put him in the DH role. So I think the more he catches, the more he's going to be on the decline because it's such a tough position to play. And you see what it does to some of these guys. Some of these guys, their career falls off a cliff. And that's why you see the transition from some of these players to other positions later in their careers. And that's why I respect the hell out of Yadier Molina for how long he did it for.
Yep.
But yeah, man, I think Realmuto and Castellanos, in my opinion, two of the bigger question marks coming into the season. They might not feel like it because they're bigger names and they've had sustainable seasons. They've had, years that you're like, yeah, they can give us a little bit less than what they did last year. And we'll be okay with that. But I think we could be seeing a bigger drop off from those two.
Yeah. I even put Alec Bohm on that list. There's no signs of a decline there, but that's a guy that I never really believed in. I was shocked at the years the last 2 years that he's had, and it's not going to shock me if he goes out and has a really poor season. To me, that entire offense revolves around Harper, Schwarber, Trey Turner. If any of those three really fall off, which we've seen some concerning signs from Trey Turner and Schwarber the last couple of years with different things, Schwarber with the strikeouts especially, and against lefties. That's got me a little worried about the offense. Now, the rotation is so good that I don't know how to feel exactly about the team. Overall, I think the roster is there. This is one of those rosters that if everything breaks out, let's say Alec Bohm takes another step, Andrew Painter takes another step, you're looking at a team that could win 100 games. But there's enough concerning signs here that I do not know what to do with this team over the course of the year. I think I like the Braves a lot more than this roster going into the season.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Phillies are obviously a good team. If they stay healthy, they're going to be there in the postseason if all goes right. But if things start to kind of fall apart, this could be a team who struggles to get to 90 wins. And I think the number is probably perfect there. If I had to make a spot pick right here, I'm taking the under, though. I just think the pitching has been everything we've talked about here. I think it's been super reliable over the years and probably will continue because Aaron Nola and Wheeler are usually, they give you the innings, and that's what you need over the course of the season.
Mhm.
But if there's something that doesn't go right in the rotation and the offense is kind of bleak and just I think we could see this team win about 86, 87, and I wouldn't be shocked. I think we could see a little bit of a regression here for the Phillies in 2025.
And I'll say it. This is kind of my biggest issue with the game of baseball just over the last 5 to 10 years. But there is no pitcher that is healthy. You might think there's a guy. You might think you look at Sandy Alcantara, like when he was able to pitch what was like 223 innings or whatever it was, like 3 years ago. We were like, wow, this is the return of pitchers able to have the control, able to go over 200 innings consistently. Tommy John surgery. Zach Wheeler looks like one of the most durable pitchers in all of baseball right now, and it's a fool's errand to think that there is really a durable pitcher out there in the game. You look at Garrett Cole. I mean, he's already looking like he's going to need surgery. He was kind of one of those guys that broke through the mold of having injuries early in his career. A guy like Zach Wheeler, ton of workload the last couple of years. I hope he stays healthy. He has been very, very durable. But oh my God, if you're telling me they lose like a Wheeler or a Nola or Bolt anywhere during the season, that's a huge loss. That's a huge loss.
Yep, and we'll hopefully see something from that offense pick up. If they want to be good, they need that offense to be right. If that pitching goes south in a way. One quick ad about this Phillies team: they added Jordan Romano from the Toronto Blue Jays. He was a free agent. He had a pretty strong season. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. He had some injuries as well over the last few. But if he can be good in the bullpen and if he can be that, shutdown type pitcher that they need, that could be a nice weapon if they're winning games and the pitching is doing its job from the starting rotation standpoint. I do worry a little bit about some of the other guys in the bullpen. It looks like they might have Joe Ross sitting in there at times. Jose Alvarado seems to be kind of up and down. Yeah, that's another question mark I have about this team is the bullpen. I'm a little worried about them in ways.
The one interesting guy is Taijuan Walker. They're going to put in their bullpen this year. It looks like he's going to be maybe the long man, multi-inning man. But I'm really interested because he was a guy, struggled with walks, but high-velocity guy, real big guy. I think he's like 6'5", over 250. I'm interested to see if they kind of churn him out into be one of these super high velocity guys. I could see him being an interesting piece in that bullpen this year. He's a guy that started his whole career. Those are the interesting type of names where you switch roles and they're going to see how it works in the bullpen this year. But I agree. I think the rotation is the heart of this team, and if they can't go deep into games, I'm a little worried about the bullpen.
2025 Philadelphia Phillies, we will see. Over under 90.5. I would personally be on the under. And I meant to pull this up as we were going through it, and I just did. PECOTA projections. Let's see what PECOTA has them at. They have them at, wow. I am shocked to see this number. Sean, all right, I'm going to put you on the spot. Let's see if you either know or remember what the PECOTA projections have for the Philadelphia Phillies. What do you think it is?
Oh, man. Well, I think PECOTA goes a little bit more conservative. Like, I think for the Dodgers, they were like under 100 wins. I'm going to say...
they actually have the Dodgers 103, just to say. 103 for the Dodgers 103. Right now.
Okay, great, great. Wow. Let's go and say about 89.
On here, they have 85.
Wow.
Yeah, 85.9. The sim, they kind of go up to the points and everything. But yeah, wow. They have 85.9 for the Philadelphia Phillies. So they're expecting a little bit of a drop off. And their playoff percentage is 52.3% according to PECOTA here.
Well, that's the thing. One of these three big teams in the NL East, they could always grab two of the wild cards, but there's a high chance that one of these teams only wins 84 games and misses the playoffs entirely. And if I had to put my money on it of the Braves, Mets, and Phillies, I think I would choose the Phillies.
Yeah, and Sean, we've seen this over the years in baseball. Is a team, there's usually one or two teams who really drop off that no one really projects, and we know the number one example of who did it in 2023. No one saw it coming. I didn't see it coming. A lot of people in our fan base didn't see it coming. But the drop off from the Cardinals in 2022 to 2023 was insane. I mean, I was putting in World Series tickets for the Cardinals to win the World Series in 2023. I thought they were that good of a team. I thought they could have been that good. And man, did they fall off a cliff and finished 20 games under 500. I'm not saying the Phillies are going to finish 20 under 500. I'm not saying that at all. But I would not be shocked if we're going to get that 85, 86 win team and they maybe don't even make the playoffs. So, yes, that's the team
it's so hard.
Concerned about.
You have these teams like the Phillies where you try to say, okay, the veteran leadership, you got guys that have done it year after year after year, guys that went to the World Series. Is that going to help them? Or are you looking at guys who are kind of on the twilight of their career and this is kind of the end? So I don't know how to feel about a lot of these Phillies veterans. It scares me. I could see them do well, but it scares me.
Yes. And one quick reference, Fangraphs has the 2025 projected season standings out. They have the Phillies at 87 and 75, so another projected under, according to them, versus the sports books. Pretty interesting. And I gotta say, if there's a stadium I want to go to in this league, it's the Citizen Bank Ballpark. I always see it on TV. Yeah. You can see the city backdrop with the buildings and everything, and it just seems like a cool atmosphere. You always hear about Philly fans being crappy, and they might be they're the East Coast. The East Coast always has those type of fans who are rough and rowdy. But in a way, I kind of like it. You got to have a passionate fan base. If you don't have a passionate fan base, that's the thing. Here's the Marlins, all right? And here's the Philadelphia Phillies, like all the way at the top, like two total opposite fan bases. You have a fan base who absolutely doesn't care. They're going to the South Beach. They're going to eat cotton candy and nachos at the game. And then you got Philadelphia Phillies fans who, if you're not performing, they're going to boo you. And, I don't say you should always boo your players, but in some situations, I think it's good. And then, the player just has to understand the situation. It's not like they hate you. They're not hating on you. They're like, come on, we're paying you the money. We're passionate here. We want you to do well. We want you to perform. So that's what I love about the Philly fan base is, they can be scumbags. A lot of people say that about them, but they're fun and they're passionate, and you got to respect that as a sports fan.
No, you look at Alec Boehm. He was booed. They even caught him on audio, right? They caught him on mic to say, "Oh my God, I hate it here." Remember that like 3 years ago? And now he's one of the most beloved players in the whole organization. He loves playing there. He says that you're 100% right. One of the most passionate fan bases in the entire league, for sure.
Yeah, I would love to I've been to Philly. I've never been to the stadium. I've had a Philly cheesesteak. They've been incredible the times I've had it. And what better way to go to Philly and get a Philly cheesesteak and then watch the Phillies play? Hopefully, the game I would go to is against the Cardinals. That'd be pretty cool. But yeah, Philadelphia. We'd love to go there for a game sometime. All right, well, great talk on the Phillies. I know that'll be a fun type of team to watch throughout the season, especially if we kind of have their under. I think it'd be kind of a fun way to see how they do throughout the year if we end up taking that season total wins to go under 90.5. But let's move into the team who probably had the biggest free agent acquisition, and that was the New York Mets, adding Juan Soto to a team who made it to the NLCS last year. They couldn't get by the Dodgers because they're just a different animal, and they were loaded from top to bottom. But what did the Mets do? They were not complacent. They went out and got Juan Soto from the New York Yankees, and they gave him what he wanted, and that was the most money probably that he'll ever see in his life. I don't think he'll ever get another contract like this. But, man, what an addition for the Mets after having the year they did last year. They were projected at 81.5 wins last season. They went well over it, made the postseason, as we all know. But then they picked that up with Juan Soto. They brought back Pete Alonso, who was in question of maybe leaving for another team, but I don't think it really got there. I think he was always going to come back on that, whatever it is. I think it's a 2 or 3 year contract. Yeah, I think this is an interesting team too. We're going to have a lot to say about this New York Mets team. Sean, do you feel like Juan Soto elevates the Mets to a point where no matter how their roster looks elsewhere, he can take them to the top and win over 90.5 games? Or do you think there's still some concerns around this Mets team?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I think the offensive Juan Soto puts a lot of their holes kind of on the back burner. because that is probably one of the 2 or 3 best hitters in the league. You look at Yankees last year, the bottom of their lineup was pathetic, and they turned out to be one of the best offenses in the league because they had Juan Soto and Aaron Judge. I mean, you think of baseball as a team game, but you have stars like that. It helps fill any hole that you're going to have on your team. I like the addition of Clay Holmes. I like the addition of Frankie Montas and Jesse Winker. I think this Mets team does have a lot of holes, though. There's a lot that I don't like about this team, especially on the pitching side. But the bottom of that order is not too special to me. I'm really worried about the pitching. I'm really worried about this Alvarez injury. I do not like who they have at catcher. It sounds like that Luis Torrens is going to start at catcher for at least a month or 2, maybe even 3. Sounds like he's going to be out. Alvarez is going to be out almost 2 months, 8 weeks at least. We're going to see about that. You have a shaky rotation, which we'll talk about with somebody who is completely unproven at catcher. That worries me a lot for a team that's suspected to go out there and win this division. I like the offense at a couple spots. I think Lindor kind of has really taken on that role as a starting shortstop in New York, which I like. I like Juan Soto. I like Nimmo to go out and have another good year. But you're looking at some injury risk with Nimmo. But Nimmo, Soto, Alonso, and Lindor can be a very solid top of the order lineup. But other than that, they have some big time holes, Alexi. What do you think about this rotation?
That's my biggest question, man. That is my biggest question and concern is this rotation. Yes, Manaea will be out. Frankie Montas will be out. I'm not sure exactly when they're projected to be back, but even when they are, I mean, can we really rely on Frankie Montas to be good in this rotation? He's going to, I guess if you want him as your 4 or 5, it's not the worst thing in the world, but I still just don't think that's going to put you anywhere over the top with him. Sean Manaea coming off a great season. Can he replicate that again? Question mark. Yes, he could, but could we see his other form that he was the last few years, which was kind of more average and below average? Definitely a possibility in a tough division with a lot of good hitters. And then you throw in Clay Holmes, who is projected to be in the rotation. Sean, I sent you that article this morning. He's apparently killing it in spring training. Yeah. He's getting a lot of strikeouts. Yeah. He has a low ERA. Again, spring training, take it with a grain of salt. But if Clay Holmes can be serviceable and good in your rotation, I guess that's a positive. My biggest question, though, is it's the workload, man. He hasn't had this kind of workload in years. And a perfect example is that is last year, we saw Jordan Hicks, who was a starter, switch to closer, reliever. Then he went back to starter when he got traded to or signed with the San Francisco Giants. And as the year went along, he just continued to fizzle out. He started strong, and then he started to fizzle. And that's my concern with Clay Holmes is if you're going to put him in the rotation, unless you have some kind of program with him where you're going to give him like maybe once a week, maybe you have a 6-man rotation for most of the early season. That's my biggest question mark is this rotation. Throw in Kodai Senga. Can he stay healthy? I think we saw last year he missed all of last season. He came back, then he got hurt. I don't know, man. There's a lot of question marks around the rotation. I would have liked to see because it seemed like the Mets have no spending limitations. Uncle Steve there loves to spend money, got Juan Soto. But, man, I would have loved to see them get a bigger starting pitcher. There were some guys out there. I was thinking they were going to do it, and they didn't. So I'm a little worried about the pitching.
Man, 63 innings, both last year and the year before for Clay Holmes. I mean, is this a guy that's going to go out and pitch 184 innings? There's just no way. You look at that rotation. Kodai Senga coming off 2 injuries, coming off that calf injury at the end of the year. He's going to be their number 1 to start the year, probably start opening day. Their number 2 right now is a relief pitcher, Clay Holmes, which you look at the relief guys. I mean, you have success stories like Reynaldo Lopez, who, transitioned well, but I think you have a lot more failures. You have a guy like Jordan Hicks who, that workload got a hold of him last year. You have a guy like AJ Puck last year who went to start the year in the rotation, totally fell off a cliff. He could not go 6 innings in a game. There was just no way that he could handle that workload. And then Tyler McGill and then Griffin Canning is in that rotation as well, along with David Peterson. that rotation to me is maybe out of all the competing teams in the National League, I think it's the worst one. I think a couple of those guys might even get injured this year. If that rotation, if you were to lose like Senga and a couple other guys, that rotation is putrid. I mean, I'm talking putrid, especially like I said, without a real catcher. If Francisco Alvarez misses 2 to 3 months, and with that defense, which isn't spectacular, I think the Mets could be allowing a ton of runs this year. I don't see any way for that pitching to hold up. I don't even like the bullpen. I don't really like Edwin Diaz this year. I think a lot of guys like Reed Garrett and they signed a guy like Paul Blackburn, and even Genesis Cabrera, I think, is now in the Mets. I think he's going to be their 6th, 7th, 8th guy coming out of the bullpen. Genesis Cabrera, which that's also gross for me too. I don't know how I feel about any part of the pitching on this team, and I don't think the bottom of that lineup is enough to keep some of those holes in the pitching away from infecting this team this year. I don't know. I don't know. I think Juan Soto is freakishly underrated even at times. I think since he's not really a good defensive player, doesn't really do anything on the base pass, doesn't steal. He's kind of a tool player. I think he gets overlooked at being such an impossibly good hitter that who could make up for a lot of your issues. But man, I don't know. I don't think the Mets are going to win 90 games this year. I don't see it. Lindor and Soto and Alonso would have to have huge years to pull that off. And then the biggest name, which I think their season may even come down to in terms of the offense, is Mark Vientos. I don't know about Mark Vientos this year. What a crazy breakout year last year. How real was that? I don't know. If he can be that 5th, 6th hitter in that order and protect some of those guys, maybe they'll score enough this year to hold off some of those holes in the rotation. But what do you think about Mark Vientos coming off a huge season, really leading that charge with them going into the playoffs last year, kind of turning it all around in the second half last year? Is that guy enough for this offense to kind of turn it up and be able to perform well this year?
Great question, man. 27 home runs, 71 RBIs, 266 average. Very, very key piece to that successful run to the NLCS was Mark Vientos. He's only what's his age? 25? Yeah, he's 25. He was a second round pick, 59th overall. I think a lot of the season, I mean, if you want that offense to be as good, obviously you're going to have Lindor, Alonso, and Soto. Those are guys who you expect to be good. They're your 30-plus home run guys. You don't have to question them at all. But Vientos, certainly a guy that you want to have somewhat close to a season he did last year. Not saying he's going to have the year he did, but if he can take that step in the right direction and continue to improve as a player, then yes, I do believe this Mets team can be even better, especially offensively, than we saw last year when you add, of course, Juan Soto to this mix with what you already had. Do I think it'll happen again, though? I think that is probably the biggest question. I'm looking at his numbers here, and I'm seeing if I'm missing anything.
Still only 25 years old. Still only 25 years old, just kind of entering his prime. If last year was truly the breakout, this offense could turn into something really good this year.
I think I'm more higher on him than people would think. I mean, 838 OPS last year. He slugged 516, on base percentage at 322. All of those are good all across the board when you're talking about a 24-year-old guy. Yeah, I think Mark Vientos, I trust him. I trust that he'll have a good season. And he doesn't even need to be the main guy. As I said at the beginning, they have the top 3 guns, Lindor, Soto, and Alonso. You take that pressure off. That's the thing. In baseball, the Cardinals would hope this guy's like their second or third best hitter. He doesn't have to be that in New York. He has to be their 5th, 6th. Who knows? Maybe if these other guys step up, he could be their 7th best hitter. I think he'll be better than that. But I think that type of organization in the Mets who put other guys who they know are there, like I just mentioned, the 3 big guys, that takes a lot of pressure off a guy like Vientos. I really do. I believe that. And I think those guys are going to have a lot more pitches to hit, Vientos will, than you're going to see, a guy like Soto and Alonso have, because everyone knows the type of hitters they can be. So, yes, I think Vientos is a good player. I think he takes a step in a positive direction again. And this is a guy who I think, if you like fantasy baseball, definitely should target. I'm not sure what his ADP is, but I believe, Sean, you might be able to pull that up as we're on here if you want to pull that up really quick and see kind of where he's getting drafted in some fantasy leagues. But I think Vientos could be a nice piece because of that lineup and how good it can be. I think he can drive in a lot of runs this year, depending on where he's placed in it.
And it looks like ADP around number 83. So kind of higher than I thought.
Wow. Okay. Yes, that's interesting. I probably would have thought maybe 10th or 11th round or so. Yeah, they also added. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, I could see a way where this lineup is enough. Francisco Alvarez, he could come back by mid-May, and he could be the perfect 6-hitter with Vientos being there at number 5 or number 7. That offense would click. I like that offense. The thing that I actually like about the organization in general is I think they have a lot of depth within position player group. I like that they got Jose Siri. I like their bench. I mean, I think that Luis Angel Acuña's brother, I think could really turn into a player. I don't know if he'll ever be anything close to his brother, and then Starling Marte, it looks like, is even going to be on the bench to start the year. That's a guy who plays great defense, can steal bases for you too. So they kind of they're missing a lot of bottom of the order pop, but what they lack in that, I see in depth with their position player group. I like Tyrone Taylor as well, coming off the bench there. A lot of guys that can hit home runs. The offense could pop as long as those guys don't fall off, and maybe a guy like Vientos is just as good or takes another step, and Lindor and Soto and Alonso lead the way.
Yeah, you can never really complain when you get the biggest free agent piece and the great hitter that is in Juan Soto. That's going to elevate this team a ton. A player like him makes you better all around. Like, it's just going to make your offense even deeper than it was last season. That's a great addition. And you guys got to respect the teams who go out there and actually do it. I know it's a lot of the teams who have the money. That's a crazy contract. In my opinion, I would not throw that kind of money. I mean, of course, if I had it, I would. But I just think that's still an overpay. Like, Juan Soto's never going to have the offensive numbers that Albert Pujols ever did over the course of 10 seasons. It's just the nature of it. And you can come back and bookmark this if you want, but he's never going to put up those offensive numbers. If you go back and look at Albert Pujols' first 10 seasons with the Cardinals, Pujols or Soto will not even sniff those numbers. Sorry, but it's just not going to happen.
Man, you know what's crazy? Soto still 26. At the end of the year, he will still be 26 years old. That is unbelievable to me. I cannot believe that he'll have a few more explosive years in the next coming years. But yeah, I don't know how you could ever justify spending that much money on one player. I like to see the front offices spending like that, but oh man, there's no way. No matter what he does, he's going to live up to a contract like that. There's just no way.
They'll be paying him a lot toward the end, man. When you're getting like his prime right now, but once it starts hitting those 30s, and if he starts to regress a lot, that's when it's like, damn. Like, if he can get them a World Series, though, if he can get them a World Series or two, at the end of the day, it's worth it. If you get those World Series rings, that's what matters the most. Yeah. So Mets will be banking big time on that.
Well, my next question is one of my last questions about this team. Those role guys, what about a guy like Jeff McNeil? I mean, is that a guy you think could bounce back a little bit, or is he kind of coming to an end of him being an impact player? You look at that guy. I mean, he was a borderline star, all-star type of guy just 2 years ago. Now he's nothing more than maybe an eighth hole hitter, plays pretty average defense at second. I think the Mets are looking for those type of guys to kind of pop off a little bit this year, support a guy like Soto, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of Jeff McNeil. I feel like he's somewhat lacks certain position play at times, like especially on offense. I'm looking at his numbers from last year. It wasn't pretty. He had a 238 average, 308 on base percentage, 384 slug, 692 OPS, played in 129 games. I mean, his best year came in 2019, it looks like. Yeah, he had a 915 OPS. From like 2019 to about 2022, he was serviceable. He's a good player in the league. But if you're going to get more of the 23, 24 Jeff McNeil, I guess you don't need him to be some guy who is incredible, and I guess you just need him to be the 8th place hitter. So he's probably not the worst 8th place hitter in the league, but I think if he does start slow and you start to see him, regress even more than he did last year, in my opinion, then I think you could see him move to a bench role and move into one of those young guys who has more ability to play and maybe breaks out even more than he did. So yeah, I think Jeff McNeil is fine. I think he'll be fine if he's like their 8th place hitter. But if he's on the decline and regresses more, I could see them making the quick shift to move him to the bench.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a year of those role guys to see. You have such a big hitter like Soto. We're going to see if it all works out in New York. Another stadium that you've been to.
Yes, I have been to Citi Field. Citi Field was fun. I did have a good time at Citi Field. I will say this, compared to Yankee Stadium, if you had Citi Field and Yankee Stadium next to each other, and I had to go to one of them, it'd be Citi Field. How about that? I don't know how popular of a take that's going to be for some people,
Wow,
but I
interesting.
don't know, man. I'll talk a little bit more about Yankee Stadium when we get into the AL East. I just wasn't impressed with it. It just seemed really cookie cutter to me. I didn't feel so much of the history. I had taken the tour there before, and that was really cool. I will say the tour of the stadium was cool, but maybe because I didn't get to see old Yankee Stadium, I'm a little bit down on new Yankee Stadium. I thought it'd be a little bit cooler, but yeah, man, I liked Queens a lot. Queens was cool. Citi Field, I would like to see more around the stadium. That's the one thing. There's not much around Citi Field, as there is. There's really not that much around Yankee Stadium. There's a couple bars, but Citi Field, they need to make a little bit more. I think they're actually building a sports book and casino next to it and a couple of restaurants from my latest research that I saw on Citi Field. But yes, I liked as a stadium as a whole, I thought Citi Field was really cool, and I would totally go back there for a game. I thought the atmosphere was awesome, and yeah, a lot of cool fans too. The fans were really nice, at least to the people that we talked to.
Man, it's crazy. I'm not an East Coast guy at all. I don't really know the culture of baseball there, but it surprises me that Soto. It's a very short-term decision in my eyes, in hindsight, maybe, because I think the Yankees offered him a 15-year deal as well, north of like $700 million. I think it was only maybe 10, 20 million difference in the contract offered between the Mets and the Yankees. And it just surprised me that Soto would give up being a Yankees great. I mean, oh my gosh, 15 more years in the Yankees. He's probably going to have some MVP seasons, maybe win a championship there, be an all-time great Yankee. And he kind of gave all that up to be with the Mets, one of the most, lovable loser franchises in the league, which they're really trying to turn that around, especially now with the new owner. It just kind of shocks me that he gave up being, one of the best players on one of the most hallmarked, incredible organizations in all of sports to join the Mets. That tells me, one, I think he wants to change the culture there, which I like. But it just shocks me. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but it surprises me that he made such a big decision like that when it sounds like the contract numbers were pretty much exactly the same.
Hey, some say, some of the reports, who knows how true it is, that it came down to a sweep. Did it really come down to a sweep? Did you hear that funny report where it's like the Yankees still wanted him to pay or something, and the Mets were like, "Oh, we'll give you whatever you want. We got you a full sweep. You don't pay anything for it."
Yeah.
Didn't you see something like that? Wasn't that funny?
I did at the stadium. Yeah. A sweet for his family. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't think it came down to a sweep in terms of making a decision on the Yankees or Mets, but it's funny to see that was like somewhat of a report, like, oh, the Yankees, we're still going to make him pay for it. And I'm thinking, like, dude, you're making a $700 million contract. What is money to you? Like, if it comes down to that, you got bigger issues. But yeah, it is surprising. It is surprising to see. I would have thought he had that 1 year kind of get to feel it out the Yankees, but in a way, maybe there was some things he didn't like about the Yankees organization.
Yeah.
It seems like they're more of like a strict. They're kind of like the Cardinals, like very like, oh, we're gonna do things right. Tuck your shirt in, look proper, shave your face. I know the Yankees switched that rule now, but very, very stern. It seems like do things the right way, like the Cardinal way, do it the Yankee way. Whereas the Mets are more laid back. They've got a fun, somewhat funny owner and Uncle Steve. I think maybe that was a little bit of a role into it too, because at some point the money is the money. The Yankees were going to give him a ton anyway, so were the Mets, and maybe it came down to, hey, I'm going to be more relaxed here. This seems like I won't have as much pressure on me being as a Yankee guy, and I think he has like great. I don't know the exact thing. I have to look this up now that I'm saying it, Sean. But I think he has some pretty good numbers at Citi Field because he played in Washington all those years. I think he had some crazy numbers like when he played there. It was like high average, high home run hitter at Citi Field. Maybe that played a role. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just interesting. Just very interesting. It's like it's a young player who I think is trying to break the mold a little bit on on the big organizations kind of taking these players in free agency. So I kind of like it, but it just shocks me that he gave up so much. I mean,
sure.
If you're an all-time, I mean, they're going to retire his number. I mean, all-time great Yankee. That is not just value with yourself, but that's a lot of numerical value also. So it surprises me that he made such a big decision, but I hope the Mets do well. I'm not going to say I'm going to root against the Mets or any of these NL East teams this year. I actually like that a lot of these teams are trying to contend, and I like that they have an owner that's willing to go out there and spend. I think every other fan is jealous of the Mets and their ownership right now, frankly.
Look, I'll say it again. I said it last week with the Dodgers, how they go out and spend money because they want to win. And that's what the Mets are doing. They're going out spending money because they want to win. And as a baseball fan, for a team that I root for, the Cardinals, I want to win every year. I don't want to sit here and be like, oh, maybe in 2, 3, 4 years. No, I want to win now every single season. Like that's the kind of fan base we are. And that's the kind of fan base everyone should be, is wanting to win. So to see the Mets and the Dodgers do it, good for them. They've got the money. A lot of teams have money. They can spend money, but they decide not to. And so, yes, another team who I'll probably, if it's playing my team, I'll root against them. But I'm not going to hate on the Mets because they went out and signed Juan Soto. Why would you hate on somebody who wants to win? So, yeah, I'm just getting, the more and more we talk about this, Sean, I'm just getting tired of these franchises who don't spend money and they're just trying to do it the cheap way. Like in some years it might work, but it's not going to be a long-term thing, man. It's just not. It's not sustainable. Yeah, I hate it. I did look it up really quick, and it's a super small sample size, but Juan Soto career numbers at Citi Field. He's played in 35 games. He had a total of 39 hits with a 333 average, 466 on base percentage, 1.175 OPS, and 12 home runs. So, yeah, he likes to hit in Citi Field apparently.
Well, cool.
We'll see if that translates to the full season. All right, Sean. Well, we've just discussed the New York Mets and what we project for them this season. Let's just do, I don't know if you said it or not. So if you did, sorry, but over under 90.5, what would you take? Just off the top of your head. You don't have to give a full detail about it.
My gut tells me under, just from some of the worries in the rotation. And I don't think that the bottom of the order is going to be enough for the offense. I like Juan Soto, but I'm going to take the under.
I like it. Yep, I'm on it too. I would take the under. I think in a competitive division with the Phillies, you've got the Braves, and I think the Nationals can steal a couple wins here and there. I think this is a good division, probably one of the more fun divisions in all of baseball. But I do believe the Mets are just under that 90 mark. I think they finish about 89. They could finish at 90 if you have the under and you're still going to win your bet. So even if they do hit 90, I think that's totally doable. But I think they're right closer to around 88, 89. My biggest question marks is around that starting rotation. But if it picks up and does well, this could be a over 90 win team. We'll just have to see how that plays out, though.
Yeah, the other two notes I had on NL East was number one, I want to shout out, since we're shouting out all the position players who play a lot of games, shout out to Juan Soto. He's really one of the only superstars in the league that consistently plays every year and has not had a major injury yet. Goes out there, plays every day. Out of all the MVP candidates right now in the league, he's really the only one that goes out there and plays every day, other than maybe the first baseman. And number two was the Braves and the Mets are two of my biggest contenders to trade for Sonny Gray this year. I think that's going to be a big time thing the Cardinals look to do this year. And depending on their needs, which we've talked about, I think the Braves and especially the Mets are going to go out there, trade for a starter this year. That's just kind of something I'm looking at. I'm looking at taking something, maybe a Sonny Gray prop, or even really liking Sonny Gray in fantasy this year, because I think he's going to get traded to one of these big NL East teams. That's just a gut feeling I've had going into the season.
Sean, that is awesome. I have been waiting for some kind of projection like this from you, and that was perfect. It hit the spot. Sonny Gray potentially to an NL East team at the deadline. I could absolutely see that. And there's always been rumors. I think the Braves were kind of in on Sonny Gray when the Cardinals got him 2 years ago. I think that was 2 years ago. But yeah, I think the Braves were in on him, and I think that's closer to where he's from. I think he lives in Kentucky, so it's like somewhat closer to home for him. And I think he wants to stay somewhere in that location to where he's from. So yes, I think that could be totally a thing, because I think he has a no trade clause. So I'm not sure if he would accept to the Mets, but I could totally see the Braves going for him, and I could see him accepting one to the Braves. That's a great point, Sean. I love that. We'll have to come back and see how that looks later in the season.
For sure. Any other NL East notes you had into the year?
Sean, I had a hot take. I'll give you my hot take of the NL East. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
We talked all about the Philadelphia Phillies, and the more I talked about it, the more I came into this kind of down on them. And I just don't agree with these projections, having them over potentially 90 wins. I think they're going to finish to not make the playoffs, and I'm going to have them finishing with 84 wins. How about that? I'm going to have them finishing and having a down year.
500.
84 wins. I think the Philadelphia Phillies will be the surprise team in the league this year that has a down year, where a lot of people are expecting them to kind of stay pace of what they've been doing. So yeah, I'm a little bit more down on the Phillies than maybe some people are. And I talked all about it through here. I worry about some of those offensive players and maybe some of the injury concerns in the rotation if it comes down to it, if those guys can stay healthy. So my hot take, Philadelphia misses the playoffs and they only win 84 games max.
Wow.
That's
I guess my biggest sleeper this year would be watch out for the progression of those Washington Nationals. I think by July, August, maybe they'll be 500, maybe a little less than 500. But we're going to be talking about, you want to talk about fantasy impact? There's going to be probably 5 guys on that Nationals team that everyone's going to want in fantasy, especially going into drafts next year. I think the direction of that Nationals team is scary. And who knows, they could jump the Phillies next year if some of those Philly veterans kind of fall off a cliff this year, like we were kind of projecting there. So watch out for that direction of that Nationals team. They're going to have number 1 pick in that draft. I really like the direction of that team. I think they're going to be good the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I pulled up some of the odds here. I did Cy Young odds and I did MVP odds. Sean, let's just do a quick, who do we think has value, or who would you take of these guys? I just pulled up like the 4 to 5 highest odds for the NL East. So we have Soto 6-1, Harper 18-1, Lindor 22-1, and Matt Olson 50-1. I know you talked about Matt Olson.
Give me Matt Olson. Give me Matt Olson. Yeah, I think he could have another one of those big 40, 50 home run seasons. I really do.
Sure. And if the Braves are good this year, like we think they will be, and they win the National League East, and it's really not that close, usually they look at players from that team as potential MVP candidates. Of course, you want to see, they like to look for the all-around guy who can steal bases and do everything like Acuna. But if Matt Olson's putting up the numbers, they like to look at home runs too. Sometimes home runs only matter, and Matt Olson can do that. If he hits over 40, 50 home runs again like he did before, this could be a guy for a strong MVP candidate. 50-1, pretty nice. Long, it's considered a long shot because he's not projected higher than Soto, Harper, Lindor, Ohtani, but 50-1 is a nice price. I would also throw in there Lindor. Lindor's coming off a phenomenal season. So if I'm looking for value, I'm looking at Lindor because he should only get better in this lineup with the addition to Juan Soto. He should have more pitches to see. So yes, Lindor would be my pick. If it wasn't Matt Olson, I'd pick Lindor at 22-1 to win the MVP. And then I had the Cy Young odds up too. I had Wheeler at 8-1, Sales 17-1, Alcantara 25-1. I didn't see Aaron Nola. Aaron Nola was 60-1, so a lot more of a longer shot. And then of course we had Spencer Strider at 50-1. Kodai Senga 50-1. I don't have all those guys listed there, but Sean, is
Man,
there a
I'll tell
guy
you,
from this?
my deep sleeper here, I don't love any of the names on the screen, to be honest, especially Alcantara. I mean, oh my gosh, he could be traded by the end of May. He could be traded. Chris Sale, I'm really worried about an injury this year. But you know who? Give me Schwellenbach to some long Cy Young odds.
Let's see what his are.
Really, really like him coming into this season. He looked great last year. Strikeout numbers are there. I trust the Braves to really develop, a really good pitcher. They've done it with Reynaldo Lopez. They've done it with Strider. We'll see what he can turn into this year. He's going to start the whole year. He's going to be their number 2 or 3 to start the year this year.
Sean, his odds are actually better than I thought. 40-1. I thought they would have been a little bit longer.
Interesting.
So he's got better odds to win the Cy Young than, I'll just name some players: Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, Senga, Sonny Gray, Spencer Strider, Aaron Nola, Freddie Peralta. Just name me some guys. So yeah, he's up there. He's looking to take that next step for this Braves rotation, and I like that look. And definitely a fantasy guy people should be looking out for this season. Let's see. What else are we missing here? Any other hot takes, Sean, before we close it out? I know we've discussed all the National League East teams. We gave you a breakdown on each one. We gave a little ripping to the Marlins. We talked about why we like the Braves, why to look for the Nationals up and coming. Phillies could be on the low. Look for them to maybe regress here. And then the Mets, of course, with the addition of Juan Soto and how they can be. But, Sean, is there any other hot takes? Anything else you want to add before we close out today's?
My only thing to look out for is the Mets, to me, have such a rotation that is so fragile that you look at maybe 2 or 3 things that go wrong. You're not looking at a team winning like 88 games. You're looking at a team winning like 78 games. So just be on the lookout. I know the offense is probably going to keep them afloat all year, but that rotation, that is the scariest rotation. I might even take the Nationals rotation over that Mets rotation right now, especially if Manaea and Montas, who, are maybe 3, 4, 5 guys, they could come back. I'm not even sure I would really like that rotation at all. It sounds like Manaea did a lot of mechanics adjusting last year. That's kind of why he took off, ended up taking off quite a bit at the end of last year. Had a really strong finish to last year. If he's hurt most of the year, or if he's not what he was last year, that rotation is going to be not just average. They're going to be really bad. So if there's a chance out there that you can grab some alternate line of Mets under 79 wins or something like that, that's a team that, to me, their floor could fall off a cliff real easy just because of that rotation.
No, I'm with you. I think there's some concerns there about that rotation, no doubt about it. We'll see how they do and how they can fix it if needed down the stretch or in the middle of the season at the deadline. But yeah, I think we're pretty much good on this live. As a review, I would be taking the Marlins under 63.5 wins. I'm shocked that it's even at that number, but just a pathetic offense and all-around team, in my opinion. So I'm going to be on the under there. Love the Braves this year. I'm going to put in a couple of futures bets on their over 92.5 wins, as well as winning the division and World Series odds. I'm going to put a couple of I think I'm going to put a little bit on that too, because they have such a deep lineup, and once they get those 2 key players back, they could be dangerous. Nationals, definitely a team to look out for. Definitely looking out for the Nationals. I might flip a switch and maybe take the over there if I had to in those 2 teams. Phillies, I'm going to go under, and the Mets, I'm going to go under in total wins for the season. So, yeah, a lot of fun season ahead for these teams. I'm looking forward to seeing how they all do in 2025.
It's crazy. They were projected 81 wins last year, Mets.
81.5. Yeah, actually,
really,
you know what? I bet Kenny. We were in Vegas last year, and I was like, gosh, this is the Mets rotation. This is awful. And Kenny's like, oh, they're going to be good this year. I'm like, okay, let's do a bet. So I took the under 81.5, and he took the over, and he won.
Nice. I mean, it's crazy. They were projected for that, and they added Juan Soto, great all-star player, and then Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas, and now they're projected for 91. I don't know if that's a 10-win swing to me. I know some of those guys performed well last year. Vientos took the next step, and yada yada yada. But I don't know. I don't. We'll see. We'll see. I don't want to make that same mistake again. But man, the Mets do not scare me in that division.
All right, Sean, I have one last trivia question for you. Let's see if you can get it. Okay, we're going to close the show out. We started it with ripping the Marlins. We're going to end it with just seeing if you know when the last time they won. You might have actually wrote it down. I'm not sure. But do you remember the last season it was, what year it was, when the Miami Marlins won the World Series?
I do. 2003. It was.
Oh, that was too easy, man.
I believe, if I recall, I think that when the last was that the year when Edgar Renteria had the game-winning hit, maybe in Game 6 or something
I
like
think
that?
it was something like that, yes.
And I think that's what sparked the Cardinals to actually go and get him was his series there with the Marlins in the World Series. There was a story about how they liked his hustle, or they liked the way he played in the World Series, to where he got a pretty big contract with the Cardinals.
Yeah. That was actually, I loved Renteria when he played for the Cardinals. That was a great addition for them. Okay.
Man, it's crazy. The Marlins, one of the worst organizations that has ever existed in the league. They have 2 championships since 1995.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy. They have the same amount of championships like as some of the best teams in the entire league. It's crazy. But they've in the last 10 or so years, it's been really, really bad.
And Sean, I'll try to get you on this trivia here. Okay. So he was just announced that he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. That's Ichiro Suzuki. Sean, do you know who he played with when he hit his 3,000th career hit in Major League Baseball?
Oh, interesting.
Do you know who he was playing for at the time, I should say?
Was it the Marlins? Was it the Miami Marlins?
It was the Marlins, yep.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Let's see if you can try to get this one too. So you got oh my gosh, this is hilarious. Okay. You may not know this one, but do you know who the team was that he played against to get 3,000?
Oh,
can you remember that?
Good one. It wasn't the Mariners, was it?
No, it was not the Mariners. It was not.
No, I have no idea. I'll guess it wasn't the Cardinals, because I would have remembered that. Let's say
you're gonna love this, but yeah, just guess one more time and then I'll tell you.
Let's say the Dodgers.
Okay. Well, no. And it took a little while for him to get to 3,000 because at this point of his career, he was kind of slow, not as good anymore. And I remember like there was a couple games beforehand where it was all the media there and it didn't happen. Sean, it happened at Coors Field in a 10-7 Marlins win in a hit against Chris Rusin in the 7th inning. It was a triple off the wall. So of all places, Ichiro got his 3,000th career hit at Coors Field. Wow.
Oh my God.
I did not know that, but I looked it up and I was wondering but yeah, your favorite ballpark, Coors Field.
Dude, the Rockies and the Marlins, just 2 of the biggest jokes. I mean, give me the Cleveland Browns over the Marlins and the freaking Rockies, dude. I mean, it's terrible. Yeah. They're terrible.
I always say if there's an organization as pathetic as these are, they should have like the Marlins should only have 5 more years in Miami. And if they suck and they don't do anything to improve their team, they should move them and put them to a new city. Ownership should have to sell. They should get totally new ownership, a totally entire, just fresh organization, move them to a different city who actually cares about baseball, who doesn't have fish tanks in your stadium, because who needs a fish tank in your stadium? Oh, I need to go out to the outfield and look at all the fish. No one gives a crap about fish in your stadium, okay? I don't care if you're in Miami. Go to the beach. Go to South Beach. Go spend $130 on eggs and bacon on South Beach because it's in South Beach.
At one point, they spent more money on that big contraption with the swordfish moving, in center field than they did in free agency that year. They spent more money on that thing than they did in free agency. That whatever offseason that was, like 2018 or whatever.
It's embarrassing, man. This is absolutely coming. This is gonna be a clip. So this will be a clip that I make roasting this Miami team because they don't deserve any good things about them. But all right, Sean. Well, great stuff. Thanks for coming on today. We just reviewed and previewed the National League East, what we like to happen in 2025. Thanks for watching to everyone who does. This will be posted on YouTube at a later date. But if you watched it, thanks for watching. Please follow, like, and subscribe to our channel. We'll be here all season long. We have some cool ideas coming throughout the season. We'll be doing something weekly, and we'll even do some sports betting segments fantasy baseball segments. If you're a fantasy football, I'm getting ahead of myself. If you're a fantasy baseball player and you need some help throughout the season, get in here. We love fantasy baseball. We will give you our sleepers. We'll give you our guys to look out for, waiver wire targets. We'll do a lot of fun stuff throughout the year. So be on the lookout for some more cool ideas that we have. And as always, give us some feedback. If there's something you'd like to see, or if there's a comment you want to make, if there's something you disagree with or agree with, let us know in the comments. We would love to hear other perspectives around the league. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day. And we are not too far away from baseball season. We're just 18 days away. Have a good day and enjoy it.